So welcome to chapter 3, which is going to be dealing with an introduction to basic face tools inside of Maya. So I'm going to cut right to it. First we're going to examine how we can go into face selection mode in different ways where we can select faces. Now there are quite a few different ways we can select faces. My favorite one, and the one I use the most, is whatever object you want to select faces on, right click, hover over it, and I have the right click held, and I go down and see how I hover over faces. Now I'm in face select mode, and I can select all the faces on here. The same selection rules apply. I can drag a marquee. I can hold down shift to inverse select. I can hold down shift and control to additive select, and control to deselect faces. Alright, let me go back into perspective. Now let's figure out different ways in which we can go into face selection mode other than that. Another way we can do it is by, in our shelf status line up here, we can select this component icon here, and notice we can go between all objects and components. And inside of here we have all these other little options here. Face right here is what you see that we'll be using, that's faces. And you can see which one of these buttons are if you follow my mouse all the way down to the bottom left. This little tooltip display, if you hover over each icon, it'll tell you which one it is. So faces is what we want to be selecting. So that's another way in which we can select faces. And you can also select multiple different components that you can select at the same time, like so. So we're in face mode. Now we can select edges and this and that, but we're going to be dealing just with faces, like so. You can also click on this modeling tool icon. I'll zoom in. See this modeling tool button right up here, the top left of the screen here. If I select that, then our modeling toolkit pops up, and the very top options we have here are object mode, and then the different kind of components. So if we select the face icon right there, now I can select faces. There's even a keyboard shortcut. If you press F11 on your keyboard, now you're in face select mode. So with those 4 ways we can get into face selection mode. And at any time you want to go back into object selection, in which we select the whole object, we can right click and go to object mode. We can press object mode up here, or we can press object mode on our modeling toolkit, accessing this button right here, or we can just press, if we're in face mode, we can just press F, toggle between F8. So you'll notice as I'm pressing F8 on the keyboard, we're toggling between these 2 icons you see up on our status line. So those are just a few ways we can toggle between selection modes so we can get to pushing these faces around. And next we're going to talk about growing and shrinking our selection of faces. So that works, and I'm going to go to polygon primitives, create a sphere. This will be easy to show on the sphere. I'm going to pull it out of the way. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select maybe just a random face on my cube, and if I press shift and caret sign, or greater than or less than sign rather, I can exponentially grow my selections. So we hold shift, less than shrinks it, greater than grows it. That can also be found in our select, grow and shrink right there, but you don't want to have to keep pressing that over and over again. So shift and our greater than or less than signs on our keyboard will help grow our selection. That'll be pretty useful if you want to select faces, all the faces on maybe a floating object. There's uses for it. Alright, now we're going to maybe start making something so I can start demonstrating some of the other face tools. So I'm going to clear my scene. I'm going to go to polygon primitives, and I'm going to go to sphere. And before I make a sphere, I'm going to go in and adjust how many divisions I want to do. I'm going to do 16 by 16. So now when I press create, not exactly what I wanted. Let's see. I want a sphere that has a face on each. Is 18 by 18 going to do it? I'll just work with that. That'll be fine. Alright, so in this demonstration, I'm going to create a coffee mug while I show off the different tools here so you can see the tools in practical application. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go into face mode, and I'm going to use that selection mode to select faces so I can cut off the top of my mug here. So I'm going to press spacebar to go into my 4 quadrants view, and I'm going to hover my cursor over the side view, press spacebar again, and I'm going to zoom in, and I'm going to select maybe the top faces right here of the cube. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and extract my face here. So what that does is I could just delete them, but if I ever wanted to have the top to a coffee cup, or if we were making a bowl, if I wanted a lid, it might be useful to keep these faces while separating them so I have 2 different meshes. So to do that, I can go to mesh and extract. Let's see, where's it? Edit mesh rather, and go all the way down here and go to extract. So what that leaves us with are 2 separate meshes, 2 separate objects. And you'll quickly see me just going through the different scenes. Spacebar brings us up to our 4 quadrant. Hover my cursor over the perspective, and now we can see I have 2 separate meshes here. Alright, I'm going to just pull this top up. I'm going to focus on this coffee cup right here. Alright, the first thing I'm going to want to do is I'm going to select the faces on the bottom of my coffee mug here, or coffee cup, and I'm going to make a flat bottom. So I'm going to pop out by pressing spacebar and go into my side view here. So I remember popping out with spacebar, hover the cursor over the quadrant you want, or the view you want, press spacebar again to maximize that view. And I'm going to go into face selection mode, and I'm going to select, I got to figure out how thick I want my bottom. So yeah, so now I'm going to press R on the keyboard to go into scale mode. I'm scaling these faces in the Y direction, and then I'm just going to shove it up like so, and now I have a bottom of the cup. And that might be a little wide, but we'll roll with it. Alright, so now I have a flat bottom of my cup, and I've used extract faces to separate the top and bottom. So we're going to hit up extrude face. This is going to be a workhorse for our modeling in the future. We're going to be extruding faces a lot. So I'm going to go over a few different principles of extrusion. First of all, I'll just demonstrate what extrude does. Okay, so I'll go in and I'll select this face right here, and I'll extrude that face, and a few things happen, right? We have a new handle tool that has all these different, we have scale cubes, we have translation handles. Oh, and if I pull it out in the X direction, I can pull it straight out from its surface. Okay. The extrude brings up all these different tools, one being the handle I just observed, another being the extrusion menu right here, and you can resize it by grabbing this bottom, and these give us different values in which we can play with. I'm going to left click some of these values, and I can scroll left and right, and you can see that thickness pushes us out in the direction the face is facing. It's another local translate Z that we were doing, same thing here. And you can even go into this extrusion menu and bring up all these different options right here. I'm just going to reset it so we get the default options, what you'll probably initially see. You can even control how thick the face is, like so. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a handle for my coffee cup. But before I do that, I want to show us some of the dangers of face extrusion, some of the errors you may run into. Alright, so I selected that face, everything's fine, but let's say, let me back up a little bit. Let's say, as I was selecting that face, I drug a marquee around it and selected that face. Alright, good, I have that face selected. I extrude my face. What the heck? I have all these extra faces selected. I didn't want that at all. What happened? Well, as I was dragging my marquee, I selected back faces, and if I press 4 on the keyboard, we can see what that does in wireframe view. The marquee selection selected the face I was looking at, and all the faces that were hidden behind the front of my cup. So you want to avoid that. So anytime you're selecting faces, I like to kind of double check in wireframe view by pressing 4 on the keyboard, and everything looks fine. I'll press 5 on the keyboard and go back into shaded view. So multiple faces being selected is a pitfall. So I'll go ahead and extrude that. And I just want to go into wireframe view one more time and make sure I got that. Okay. Okay, well, obviously I need to select that face again and extrude it again. And if you were paying attention, you'll notice I already made another fatal mistake with extrusions. I extruded the same face twice because I got sidetracked, and now I have this hidden ring of faces that I can see if I press 3 into subdivision smooth mode. I can see them clearly right there. But if I go back into low poly mode by pressing 1, they're nowhere to be found. I can't tell if I've extruded or have them selected. So I'll go walk us through that and show us exactly what happened. Alright, as I was worrying about selecting these backside faces, I selected the face and I hit extrude, and then I had a second thought of making sure that maybe I have other faces selected. So I deselected that face. What we've already done is we've already made an extrusion on that face, and now we have overlapping faces. And with my heads up display right here with my poly count active, if I select that face, let me just make sure I get both faces selected. I have 5 faces selected right now, but it's only showing me 1 face selected. So that's a problem. You don't want to accidentally extrude a face and get overlapping faces. So I'm going to undo all that stuff and get us back to square one. Alright, great. That's why I like switching between 1 and 3. I'm not going to model in 3 yet. We're not up to snuff yet on subdivision modeling. But just using 3 on the keyboard to go into sub D mode allows us to see errors like that we maybe wouldn't see otherwise. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to give my cup a little handle here, and that'll show us how we can start the beginnings of maybe a handle here. But I might be getting ahead of myself making a handle. You'll notice one thing here. My cup has no inside. It's just like this black void. I have no thickness to my cup here. So not only can you extrude faces, but you can extrude the whole object itself, and that in turn will make a bunch of new faces. So we're going to add thickness to our cup by going to hold down the left shift key, right click, and go to extrude. That's one way to get to extrusion. Alright, another way to get to extrude, I'm going to make sure I haven't I undid that extrusion. Another way to get to extrude is to go to edit mesh, extrude, and there we have the same handles popping up. We also have in our modeling toolkit that you'll see right here, we also have in the components menu the option to extrude from there. And I can even hit Control E on the keyboard as a hotkey to pull up extrude. Alright, so those are 4 ways you can extrude. My personal favorite and the one I primarily use is hovering my cursor over the object, holding down the shift key, holding down the right click. I'm in my radial menu, and I go straight down to extrude. Alright, so what we want to do is we want to give thickness to our cup. Well, hey, we already have a thickness option here. And this is a little finicky. It only, by default, it only steps up by 0.1 value, 0.1, you know, 0.1, 0.2, 0.3, 0.5. So if I go to 0.1, that might be the right thickness, but you can also go in, if I click here, I can do 0.75 maybe, and that's huge. Maybe I wanted 0.075. There we go. So you can type in your own values here to get more of the thickness that you want. Maybe 0.06. I don't know, maybe 0.04. I'll go with 0.04. I like that. So now I have thickness on my cup. I hit 3 on my keyboard, and we're looking at a pretty nice bowl here, but we're trying to make a cup. So why don't I create a little bit of a lip at the top of my coffee cup here as well? It's kind of just boring here. I want to create kind of a lip for somebody to put their mouth to. So what we're going to do is we're going to try to extrude the top part of this cup here. Now we're instantly running into a new problem. Am I going to go into face mode and select all of these faces one by one? Oh, that's so tedious. Alright, well, we could do that. We could also maybe go into our front view and just hover our cursor over it. There we go. I have all those selected. But I also have the inside of my cup selected. So then I have to go in and maybe deselect those. That's another time sink. Here's a nice little trick here. So I'm going to hold down Shift and Control on my keyboard to do an additive selection. You can see the little plus sign there. I'm going to click once, click twice, and double click in the direction that I want to select faces. And look, Maya is smart enough to know the direction in which I'm selecting faces, and it selects all the faces in that little ring of faces. I'll do it again. Hold down Shift and Control for additive selection. One face, two face, double click all faces. Alright, that'll work for any direction. We can go 1, 2, double click, and we select all the faces vertically. And look, we even get like a weird, you can really vary up the direction in which you want to go here. But for our intents and purposes, creating this little lip here is what we want to do. So hold down Shift, and you can also work with inverse selection, but additive selection with Shift and Control, 1 click, 2 click, double click, boom. All of my faces are selected. Now let's use our extrude tool to extrude out my cup here. Make a little bit of thickness here. And right now that's not looking too good. It's just kind of like a little weird lip here. And I've extruded too far. So I'm going to go in and tweak this value to be like 0.04. Bring it up like that. And what I want to do is I want to kind of scale down these faces so it's not just like a big blocky little hoop around it. I want to add kind of like maybe a little bit of a bevel. So if I go to offset, that's exactly what I want. But offset's being a little cranky. So I'm going to go in and put in my own value, 0.04. And boom. We're already getting a nice little bevel here. See how we're having a nice little smooth gradient? We're just selecting the offset or maybe the scale of these faces here. 0.02 gives you a little bit of a bigger one. Maybe 0.06 is what I want. And there we go. Now I got a nice little like lip on the top of my coffee cup. And we're really rocking with these extrusions now, learning how to use that extrusion menu. Alright, so the next thing I want to do is maybe add like a decorative inlay loop around my coffee cup. But I don't want the little inlay loop I'm going to put around it to be this thick. That's way too thick for the design I want to do. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use add divisions to add more faces in a certain direction around my cup. So let's talk about the add divisions tool real quick. Alright, so quickest way to explain it, I can select my whole object here. Let's see, add divisions, we go to edit mesh, go to add divisions. That's one way to get to add divisions. Or we can bring up my modeling toolkit with this little hammer and cube up here, and we can go to add divisions there. And as you can see, we're already getting an added division there. So what happened? We just kind of made divisions everywhere. So let's undo that and get a better look of how we can control how we add these extra faces to my coffee cup here. I'm going to go to Edit Mesh, Add Divisions. I'm not just going to click on it. I'm going to go to this little extra menu here. These little squares bring up fine controls for the tools we're using. Alright, so right instantly we have Add Divisions exponentially or linearly. Exponentially basically adds divisions throughout the whole model, top, vertically, and horizontally. And divisions levels just basically says how many extra faces we want. So if we hit apply, we can see I have maybe twice as many faces as I did before. And I can increase these divisions like crazy by clicking and sliding on my subdivide face tool here. Or with my poly subface tool, or my add divisions little menu here, I can click on the little extra menu pop up here, and I can add these extra options. And divisions U and V, they're not doing anything. Why would I add those? Well, if you just want to add faces in a certain direction, and in this case, I want to make more faces horizontally through my cup. So I'm going to do a few things here. I'm going to use that nice ring selection tool we did. One click, two click, double click. And now I have all the faces selected around my cup here. Now I'm going to do linearly. This will give me fine control on how many faces I want to apply in which direction. So I'll go ahead and hit apply. And you'll see that nothing's happened, but I get this divisions U and V. I can bring those up by checking them in this box here. So clicking on this extra little menu box. Now, and you can see in the U direction, I'm adding these faces vertically. But that's bad. We're getting all these n-gons now. So that's not the direction I want to add them. But if I add them in the V direction, you can see I'm getting these nice little edge loops populating the selection of faces I had. So that's really fancy. So that's the difference between exponentially and linearly. Exponentially just does it all in every direction. Linearly allows you to control which direction you want to add your divisions to. So that looks good. So now I have a little bit more detail in my cup. And I'm going to select just this small little ring right here, and I'm going to add a little bit of an inlay. So I'm going to do an extrude face. And you'll notice right here we have our little tool here. I can just pull the blue handle in like so. But I kind of want to have it beveled or scaled in. Well, what's this little thing do? This little tool right here goes between local direction of the face here. So it switches between right on the face, and then we can adjust values right here at it. But that's not really working for us. Well, if I click it, you can see I kind of go to a more global position, the average position between all the faces I have selected now. And then if I scale in the Y direction, there we go. So that's our extrude handle tool working for us, switching between local and kind of an averaged position for all of our faces that we're extruding. So what happens if we just maybe pressed our move tool on our keyboard with W? Well, now we're kind of just getting more of a global positioning on it. So it's not really working quite the way the extrude handle was working. So I'm going to undo that. But for all intents and purposes, I now have this inlet design that I was able to make by adding divisions. Alright, so next I want to show you guys how to bevel faces. And I think what I want to do is I want to bevel and make it smoother around the lip of my coffee cup here. It's a little blocky, a little edgy here. So I want to do, don't want to extrude. I want to go into face mode. And I want to select maybe the top ring around here and maybe bevel that up so it's not just so flat and so blocky. So one click, two click, double clicks. And now we have our selection all the way around. And our bevel tool is going to be located by edit mesh, bevel, and there's our extra little window right here. This gives us a little bit of fine control before you bevel. Another way we can get to bevel is to hold down shift, hold right click, and instead of extrude face, we can now bevel face. We even have our little extra window option there. Or we can go to our modeling toolkit up here and hit bevel. But my preferred method, as always, is to hold down the shift, hold right click, go to bevel face, and there we go. So what just happened? Well, the face we had turned into kind of like this little roof triangle looking thing. Well, we can mess around with this fraction meter. If I set the fraction down to 0, we're left with what we had when we first selected those faces, just this flat top to this cup. But if I increment fraction up, we can see that we're kind of taking that face and we're adding some extra faces on either side. So here's our flat face right here. Look on either side here to the right and left as I increase the fraction. These new faces appear. I can even increase the amount of segments there. And the more segments I add, the rounder it gets. So if I mess around with the fraction and the segments, I now have a nicely rounded off top to my cup there. And that's beveling faces. That's what beveling can do for us. It helps us add these nice organic rounded off shapes there. I press 3 on my keyboard to check out what's going on. Everything's looking so good so far. I don't see any errors in my topology. Alright. So we've hit bevel face. Now we're going to introduce wedge face. And this is pretty handy in certain situations here. Now I'm going to add that handle I was talking about earlier. So to do that, I'm going to select this middle face right here in my cup. And I'm going to do just a simple extrusion. I'm going to pull out in the Z handle here. And then I'm going to hit W and just pull up my regular move handle. Alright. And maybe scale it in. Maybe make my handle a little bit smaller here. Or you know what? I'm going to start over. Hit 3 to make sure I haven't extruded. I'm going to extrude my face. And I'm instantly going to press R to go to my scale tool. And if I do that and scale from the center, I get a little bit smaller. I extrude like this little ring of edges around and get the smaller little cube here, or square or rectangle here. Now if I extrude again, my handle isn't so big and I can even scale it down even more. Alright, there we go. So what I need to do now is I need to kind of wrap this handle back down so it kind of comes down here. Alright, so I'm going to position this where it's big enough for a finger to get around. So the wedge tool is interesting because it allows you to create these nice little elbow joints while you're extruding. But it's a little tricky to get working. So watch as I use this tool here. Alright, first of all, you can find wedge tool. If we go to edit mesh, in our faces right here, we can go to wedge. I can also hold down shift, right click. There's my wedge face right there. And those are the two main ways you'll be getting to wedge face. But we can't just automatically go, okay, I want to make the elbow joint. Look what happened when we get there. No edges selected to wedge around or about. Select face and or one more edges, and then you can wedge it. So I have to select a face and an edge. We're kind of getting ahead of ourselves. We haven't talked about edges yet. But to make use of this really cool face tool, we have to be able to select an edge so we know what what part of this model we're going to be swinging this elbow around. So to do that, the easiest way I've found to do that is to open up our modeling kit tool. And if we select multi-component, I can now select faces, vertices, and edges. So I'm going to select the face I want to create the elbow joint at, and I'm going to create the edge that I'm going to swing this elbow joint around. So this bottom edge right here I'm going to select, and I can now swing this face down. So I'm going to hold down shift, hold down right click, and wedge my face, and look at that beautifulness. I can even select what kind of angle I want, and we're already getting just this nicely, perfectly proportioned elbow coming down. So I'm going to kind of do something like this. You can increase the divisions. The only thing you got to be careful about is we create a lot of triangles here, but we can work around that. So I'm just going to extrude this face one more time. I'm going to go into my regular move tool by pressing W on my keyboard. Alright. And then I'm going to use the wedge tool one more time to kind of give myself a nice little lip down here. So I'm going to go into my modeling kit up here, go to multi-component. I'm going to select the face I want to create that elbow joint at, and the edge I want to swing around. Hold down Shift, wedge face, and there we go. Now I can get something that's a little bit more organic. We have this nice little rounded off bit here. Maybe bring it up just a little bit. Extrude that face. And now we have a nice kind of complex looking handle here. Maybe it's not the most proportioned out there. If I select all these faces here and kind of change that. Oh, maybe not so much. How are we going to maybe make this a little bit longer? Maybe just select these faces. There we go. That's an interesting point to point out. So I wanted to increase the length of this little handle I made. But if I selected the whole handle that I wanted, look what it's doing. It's pulling down this bottom part of this handle here. But if I maybe deselect the thick part of that handle, there we go. It'll bring just that down with us. And I can get finer control. And now I have a nice little handle on my coffee cup. Alright, or it's more like I guess a cup and saucer kind of deal going on, right? So that's how we can wedge faces. So I'm working and I realize I made a mistake. I want to keep this cup like it is, but I also want to have a version without the handle. So that's where duplicate face can come in handy. What duplicate face does is it creates, with all the faces you currently have selected, it uses just the faces you have selected and creates a copy, a separate mesh of just the currently selected faces. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into face mode. I'm going to select all my faces on my mug here. I'm going to hold down Control and deselect the handle here. So I have all the faces of just my coffee cup. Alright. And you know what? I'm going to go in and get rid of this little ring of faces there. I don't want that either. So to get to duplicate face, I can go to Edit Mesh, Duplicate, or I can hold down Shift, right click, and duplicate faces are somewhere on here. Duplicate face. And there's a few options we can explore. And if you want to do an offset, like maybe make it a little bit thicker, you can. Or you can separate the duplicate faces into another mesh. So I'm going to leave separate duplicated faces so it creates a brand new object. Hit apply. And nothing happened. Well, that's because it made a copy. I'm going to select, just drag a marquee. It made a separate copy on my hand. Well, what's an easy way to know if this is working as intended? Well, I have been working without my outliner up, so I'm going to bring that up. And we see this P-Sphere 1, which was my original coffee cup. And my outliner is just a mess now. I don't know what's going on with it. So to clean it up a little bit, the first thing I'm going to do is go to Edit, Delete All by Type, History. And that cleans it up a little bit there. Alright, so that's the top of my coffee cup. Well, what's this? That's my coffee cup. Polysurface 4 is now my coffee cup without the handle, with this nice little black hole here. So duplicate faces gave me this extra little coffee cup there. Alright, so I'm going to introduce one more tool here. We're almost done with tools. One more tool here to plug up this hole. I'm going to maybe move this out right here. And it'll be a quick little fix. If we go to Mesh and Fill Hole, boom, hole is filled. I can even go to Mesh Display up here and soften the edge real quick. And that'll get rid of those hard edges that we just created. And now I have like a little bowl here and a coffee cup with a handle. There's one more tool that I want to introduce real quick. I won't show an application for it for the sake of the video, and it's a little bit more complex to use without knowing some of the other tools here. So I'm just going to select a random face here. I'm going to show you the poke face tool. What that does is it kind of subdivides your face and creates a vertex at the center of your face there. So notice we don't have any n-gons made, but we do have a nice little vertex in the middle of my face here. And that's useful in some more advanced modeling techniques. I just want to let you guys know that it exists, so when I introduce it again, it won't be so brand new. Alright, so that's the majority of the face tools we're going to be using in this chapter here. So basic tutorial on how to create the cup. The next part of the video, I'm just going to quickly go through how we can create a temple structure, more specifically a Greek temple structure with columns and a base and a nice vaulted roof. So I'm going to go ahead and clear out and make a new scene here and get started on that. Alright, so to get started on this temple, the first thing I did, let me position my outliner just a little bit better. There we go. Get rid of that. Is I found a source picture of the temple that I was talking about. There's three main parts to this temple that we're going to focus on here. First, we're going to focus on the base of my temple, which is this staircase system that goes all the way up to my temple here. Next, we're going to focus on the roof of my temple. So we got this nice frieze here with this pediment, this triangular brace here, really elegant architectural design. And of course, the columns, the colonnade that stretches all the way around of our temple. So with those three main concepts, we're going to use our extrusions and face tools and all the other primitive tools we learned in the last chapter to create a simple Greek structure. So let's go ahead and get started on that. I want to bring up my channel box. The first thing we're going to do is create that staircase base for my Greek structure. So I'm going to go to Create, Polygon Primitives, and you know what? There's another way we can make primitives that might be in our favor here. We can go ahead and maybe draw out the exact shape we want. So I go to Polygon Primitives and turn on Interactive Creation. So if I go back to Polygon, you can see now Interactive Creation is checked. And if I create a cube, nothing gets made. Well, now I can actually draw out the shape of my cube. And to do it more accurately, I'm going to press Spacebar and go down to my top view here. Zoom out a little bit. And I'm going to basically just kind of eye it a little bit. There we go. Make sure it's kind of even on both sides. I can create the base. Now I'm going to go back to my perspective view. Now I can click and drag it up. Alright, so the trick here is to worry about scale and making sure that we're starting out with a good base. So to make sure we're on the right kind of scale, I'm going to create, make sure I'm in the right kind of measurement. So I'm going to go to Windows, Settings and Preferences. Then I'm going to go to Settings, and I want to work in feet. That's just what I'm most comfortable with. And we'll already see that the base we drew is not so big. So maybe we should have set our feet first. So I'm going to come in and redraw out that base again. Alright. Like so. And if I go to my side view here, every one of these cubes right here is a foot. So I want my steps to be, maybe 6 inches to 7 inches. so a little bit beyond half. So that's a nice starting point for our base here. But you know what? How many feet is this? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Is there an easier way in which we can get the right size of temple we want? I mean, I want a temple that's at least 50 feet long. I'm going to turn off interactive creation. That wasn't the best start for that. We will use it in a little bit, but to get a more accurate base, I'm just going to go to cube. I'm just going to make a simple cube, and we're going to use our channel box up here to get the exact dimensions we want. Alright, so the first thing we got to figure out is what direction is what. We're going to set in our own values in our channel box. We're going to do that by using the scale values here. So I know that I want my steps to be about 7 inches, 8 inches a piece. And the very first slab we make is going to be our first step. So I want it to be a certain height. So I'm going to do maybe a 0.75. That'll give us about 8 inches, 75% of 12. I don't know. I'm going to guess that's about 7 or 8 inches there. Alright, so I got the right height. And let's say I want my temple to be 75 feet long. So I'm going to scale in the Z direction to 75. That's 75 feet right there. And let's say I want my width to be 50 feet. So I'm going to scale my X direction to 50 units. Like so. And there we have a nice start for my base here. And I'm actually going to create a layer here just for my base. I'm going to click Layers, Create Empty Layer, double click Layer, call this Base Lay, hit Save. Now with my base selected, I'm going to right click on my base layer, Add Selected Objects. Now I have a layer just for my base, and I'm going to call this Base Mesh 001. Alright, I've got a good start so far, so I'm going to save my project. So I'm going to go to File, Save Scene As, and I'm going to go to my desktop. I'm going to create a new folder called Greek Temple. Click into it. I'm going to call this Greek Temple 001. Iterative saving will be a godsend. Every time you save, you're going to create a new .ma file. Okay? So what we want to do is we want to extrude my base up to make some nice steps. So to do that, we're going to go into face mode, select this top face here, and I'm going to hold down Shift, hold down right click, and extrude face. Alright, if we do my thickness here, well, that's just bringing it up. What we need to do is we need to scale it in because we need to create the surface of my first step. So if I go to offset, maybe look at it from the top view. Now I can see my feet in my grid. Remember, every one of these cubes is a foot. So now when I offset it, I can get a better idea of how many feet or how many inches I want my steps to be. And I want my steps to be about, I don't know, again, maybe about 7 inches again. And I'm going to take note of this offset number. If I can remember how much I'm offsetting this, I can scale each step to be the exact same value. So I'm going to do an offset of 15. And I'm going to remember that. Every time I want to create the surface area of my first step, it's going to be 15. That way I'll keep a nice, pristine, geometric, symmetrical, consistent step. Alright, so I got the surface area of my first step here. I'm going to extrude again. And this time, I'm going to go into my side view. And if I look at my thickness, if I do a thickness of maybe, I don't know, maybe keep it at 15 as well. There we go. You can already see I have my first step going on. I'm going to extrude again, And look, I don't even have to think about it. I can just type in 15 at my offset, and it does it for me. I hit extrude again, 15 thickness. Look at that. We're getting nice consistent steps all the way up. Offset 15, extrude face, thickness 15. And how many steps do I want to put on this baby? I want to do one more step. An offset of 15 to scale that face in. Do another extrude face and a thickness, bringing it up by 15. And boom. Look at that perfect looking base. It's just mathematically precise and pristine. It'll make the Greek people proud back in the day, honoring their gods. Alright, so that's my base. I'm pretty much done with it. I'm going to go to Windows, bring up my outliner, base mesh 001, and I'm going to lock this baby out. So make sure that says R. Now I can't mess with my base anymore. So already we have a base that is 75 feet long by 50 feet wide. It's got exact, precise steps going up it. Now I just need to create a roof and some columns, and we'll be able to be done with it. So let's create the roof now. Alright, so I guess I could duplicate that. No, I'm going to create a brand new cube. And I'm going to show how we can use that interactive create tool. If I go into wireframe view, I can see my steps up here. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 kind of steps going on. I'm going to go to create polygon primitives. I'm going to turn on interactive creation again and make a new cube. Now I can actually draw my roof according to my base here. I'm going to eye it a little bit. No big deal. And I'm drawing it from the last step, the inside step there. And oh, let me try that again. Go to create polygon primitives, cube, draw that guy. I'm going to hide my steps now, so now I know I can dragging this up. That's what layers can do for us. So now I can bring those steps back, and I'm dragging it up. Translate Y. Well, how tall do I want this? Maybe have 20 feet tall or so, and I can do exactly maybe 25 feet. If I go to my translate Y and type in 25, that moves it 25 units up, and more or less we're 25 feet up in the air with my roof here. Alright, let's double check my okay, so we have a few things to consider here. We have a base of my roof here that's kind of thick, and it has this ornate inlay right here with a nice little frieze. A frieze is basically a decorative part of a roof here. This is a nice frieze, and like this little inlay around, it kind of goes in. So we have a base that's kind of chunky with an inlay right here, and then it turns into a triangle at the top here. So we can use extrusions to create these shapes verbatim. So I'm going to maybe make this a little bit thicker there. Bring it up. And I'm going to go ahead and create that triangular roof right there. So I'm going to go into face mode. Well, first, maybe I should worry about creating, if we zoom in here, you can see it kind of tapers off here. So maybe I should kind of mimic that shape a little bit before I make the triangle. So I'll extrude my face, and I'm just going to go to scale tool and just scale it from the center. I'm not going to worry too much about the offset and thickness there, like so. Maybe even bring it up a little bit. Now I can get that kind of overhang that I saw in my source material. Maybe it's a little too much. It's just whatever you feel like doing. Alright, and then as I bring it up, it kind of goes up, straight up right here at this little corner. So I'll mimic that. So it kind of goes straight up. And then it maybe goes off a little bit more. Kind of goes up, so it goes burr. So it kind of creates that little jagged jig-jag pattern. I'll scale it up. Well, let me extrude first. Scale it up again. And it's not as pronounced as the first one that I did. And now I'm really getting this. So we go slant, over, up, slant, up. So let's bring it up one more time by extruding. Looking pretty good. Now I can create that triangle pattern. Extrude face. So we're going to do that by just coming up and then just scaling it in the X direction. Like so. Alright. And you'll notice though, this little structure has this triangular inlet too. So we're going to extrude inwards to create this triangular inlay right here, this nice freeze. Alright, so we'll select that and we'll select this triangular face. Oh, make sure you don't have excess faces selected. And we're going to extrude both sides at once. We're going to work with both sides at once. Alright, so have both of your triangles selected. We'll go to extrude. And we're going to work with our extrude tool right here. We're going to go with an offset. So we're going to offset it by about 15. Let's see how thick that was. Maybe a little bit more. I'll go with 15. And that sets it for each side. And then we're going to do another extrusion. And then we're going to mess with our thickness again. So we're going to push it in. Like so. And it's a little bit more intricate in my thing. So I think I'm just going to kind of create some nice angles here. And at this point, I'm just going to kind of go and do my own thing here. I had some inspiration. And now I'm really going to push it in to give a nice shelf for all those statues to sit on. Alright, our roof's looking pretty good, and all we've been doing is using extrude, and we're getting some nice architectural shapes here. There's one more thing I gotta do, and I gotta add like this little detail at the bottom here of my roof. So I'm gonna select this bottom face. First thing I'm gonna do is scale it. Use my scale tool, regular scale tool at R. I'm just gonna push it out from there. I'm not going to angle it. I'm just going to go straight down now. Like so. And I'm going to create like a stair step pattern down. So I'll do an offset. Let me zoom in so you can see what I'm doing. Using my offset tool right there. Pulling it out. Doing another extrusion. And I could even use my thickness if I wanted. There we go. I'm going to do another offset. It's all about getting the right angle with your camera tool so you can see exactly what you're working with. Alright, extrude again, thickness. And there's the roof of my temple here. Alright, maybe I need to increase the height. Yeah, there we go. Well, a few things are going on here. My roof got a little bit bigger than I wanted it for my base. So I'm just going to scale down the whole roof a little bit. There we go. Now it looks like my base can support it. So now I'm going to organize it. Let's bring up my outliner. There's my P cube 1. Let's call this roof mesh 001. And I'm going to have my roof selected. Go to layers. Create layer from selected this time. Kind of skip a step. Now whatever I had selected is already put in this new layer. We're going to name it roof layer. And we're going to lock it down. So now we already have a nice roof and a nice base. I'm going to go to File, Save Scene As. And I'm not going to save over Greek Temple 001. I'm going to create Roof Temple 002 or Greek Temple 002, Maya ASCII type, hit enter, and now we have two saves at two different times in my development. So if I want to go back, I can always go back to whenever I just had my base, so I can start fresh with this roof. Now we're going to create some columns real quick. So we're going to go to Create, Polygon Primitives, and we're going to create some cylinders. But I'm going to make sure I have enough roundness on my cylinder, so I'm going to click the extra option there. Let's see, tool settings, create, First, I'm going to turn off my interactive creation. Now I'm going to create my cylinder right there. And axis divisions is what I'm looking for. I'm going to do 20 axis divisions. And I'm just going to create, there we go. Just draw a generic, well, shoot. I don't want to do that. I want to turn off interactive creation. Why was it still on? Interactive creation. Create. And there we go. It must have been a little stuck in interactive create. So now I just have like this basic cylinder here. Alright, and I'm going to use my top view here to kind of figure out how thick I want this. So I'm going to move it to the front right here, and maybe scale it up a little bit. Right there, and meets it right there. It looks pretty good. Now I want to scale in the Y direction. And I'm going to leave a little bit of room for the top and bottom so I can create some nice bases there. Alright. Now we're going to create some bases here. So the easiest way to do that, to select those faces, is I like to just drag a marquee. I have all those bottom faces selected, but also have these middle faces selected, the long faces. So I'm just going to go down Control, drag a marquee to deselect those. So I'm left with these faces at the bottom. Now I can extrude to my heart's content. And it's just going to be the same kind of dance we've been doing. We're going to bring up the offset, maybe angle it down a little bit. And I'm just going to go real quick by using the simple scale tools here. And just kind of get comfortable with how the extrude works for us. Notice how I'm just really making a bunch of different shapes here. I might have to reposition the column after I'm done. Maybe it's going over a little bit. And just bring it straight down to complete the base. Yeah, I've kind of gone over there. So I want to readjust my column here. You know what? I think that base may just be a little too big. So instead of redoing everything, I'm just going to make my column smaller. Like so. Well, now, that's too much space right there. I'm going to select my faces and just bring it up. Well, that's messing that up. That's stretching that part. Well, again, I'm just going to select these top faces here. So I've just moved these top faces up a little bit more. And there we go. So again, I'm just going to do another extrusion dance here. Just a little bit right there, and finish it up. So I have these fancy looking columns right here. They're looking a little rigid. So again, we need to figure out how to get these rigid edges out of it. And there's an easy way to do that. If I select my object and go to Mesh Display, I'm going to set my normal angle. And I'm going to set it to about 60. And that'll get rid of those crinkles, but keep the hard edges where we want them, like right there. Alright, great. So there's some columns there, and you guys just have fun doing all kinds of columns. I want to show one more nuance about the extrude tool real quick before we call this a day, and I duplicate the rest of my columns and finish up this temple here. There's a way where if you extrude multiple faces at the same time, there's two ways you can extrude them. So if I go ahead and select all these faces and do an extrusion, they all kind of roll together, right? They're all doing their own thing. They're coming together, one big roll here. But What if I wanted to add maybe some ribs to these faces here? Maybe make it ribbed. How would I do that? If I go to Edit Mesh and go to Extrude and hit this extra little option here. Is that how to do it? What I want to do is I want to keep my faces together or not. So if I extrude, I have all these faces selected, I want to extrude each one separately, but at the same time that I can control the, so it'll create this rib effect. It's hard to explain without seeing it. So what we're going to do is I'm just going to select all these faces and extrude, and you'll see this keep the faces together on. Well, I'm going to select it and just slide it to off. Look what happens now when I affect its offset. See how they're all separated? They're all being extruded together, but yet they're all kind of acting independently at the same time. That's pretty interesting, huh? And look, you can shift between the two modes. That's something new in 2016. I really like that feature. So now I can add ribs to my columns fairly easy by turning keep the faces together off and do another extrusion and just push them in, push their thickness in. Maybe a little bit of an offset too. And now I got this fancy ribbed column. The only thing left to do is name them, put them in their own layer, and duplicate them across. What is this cube? Oh, I had a random cylinder floating around in my scene. Thank you, Outliner. Alright. Column. Let's see, I'll just call it call for brevity's sake. 1. Create layer from selected. Call this call layer. And now, since I have it named in this fashion, if I duplicate it with Control D, I have Cull Mesh 002. And there we go. You know what might be easier than just doing it by hand to get it accurate and precise and to save a few extra steps? Maybe if I do an edit special. Alright, so I'm going to create, I don't know, I'm just going to kind of say 10 copies, and I want to move them in the Z direction, so that's my Z column right there. I'm going to make one maybe every 10 feet and hit apply. Okay, wrong direction. I need to do negative 10 feet, negative in the negative direction, so every negative 15 feet I want to make a column. And there we go. And I have a little bit of excess, so I can just get rid of those. And they're not quite centered, so I'm just going to select them all and just do an eyeball center job right there. Now, with all of them selected, I can hit Control D, duplicate them, and just bring them over. And then from here, I need to move them in the X direction. So why don't I do something like 15 in that one. Hit apply. Well, that's not exactly lining up. I can just kind of fudge it a little bit. Eyeball it again. Go into shaded mode. And there's a simple Greek structure. It looks a little top heavy though, doesn't it? These columns are a little skinny. Maybe if I decrease the height of my roof, it won't look so top heavy. So we're going to go in and edit my roof a little bit. So to decrease that height, I'm going to go into face mode. Select these faces. I want to kind of get rid of the height there. So maybe do that. That looks pretty good. And then I'm going to select more of that ornate out and lay right there. And I'm just going to scale it all and bring it up. So a quick little scaling fix and bring it down a little bit. There we go. Now my temple doesn't look so top heavy. And print it. It's done. Alright, so your assignment, if you want to keep continuing with this, is to make your own temple. And I did something really simple. I expect you guys to go beyond this. Okay? You can mimic what I've done for the most part, but if you just turn in something like this, that's going to be, you're not going to get, you'll get credit. That's like a C grade. But I want you to take it further than this. Maybe, if we look at my source video, wow, they actually have a whole extra inlet of columns there and an extra little wall inside there. So even though there's a portico or colonnade going around here, they actually have an inner structure there too. And they even have a little bit more intricate designs up here too. Maybe some floating geometry up there to create those like little teeth up there. And of course, you can sculpt a human figure really quick too. You know, that's pretty easy. I'm just kidding. I wouldn't suggest creating any kind of statue at this point. Just focus on clean, pristine architectural design. Don't make anything that's going to look terrible. Just focus on what you can handle. Make it a little bit more complex. You can even create an environment around your temple right here, or you can even maybe make a gallery of jugs and pottery that you saw me messing around with while I was introducing the tools. So that's going to do it for this video. Get started on those Greek temples, and questions, you know what to do. All right, thanks.